So recently my Twitter feed has been flooded with speculation on the Switch 2, the new home console from Nintendo that Polygon says all signs point towards a fall 2024 release. Now before we dive into any of that speculation, I've just gotta ask two questions. Do you trust Polygon, and does this make any sense? And the only correct answer to these two objective questions is both yes and no. One, because the Switch 2 should have been the Switch OLED that was released like 2 years ago. But more importantly, Polygon has a left-of-center bias on the media bias fact-checker website. This means both the extreme left and the extreme right aren't getting the valuable information they need to make their irrational decisions. The speculation also doesn't make any sense because Nintendo hasn't even announced the thing yet. But it's also rumored that dev kits have been sent out, so it's toss-up. Then again, you know Twitter, and you also know Nintendo fans, so you can't say it's too unexpected. How many fingers am I holding up? Damn, you really fucking suck today, don't you? Hello? There you go, man. So why am I talking about this? I'm just a dude on the internet with like 100 subscribers. I'm a little fish in this big Nintendo ocean. The same reason why everybody else does anything on this platform. Because I want attention. Fucking like the video. I also believe, despite the amazing sales the Switch had, Nintendo became extremely lazy after the initial success. And despite the first 2 years of the Switch's lifespan, and a couple of pops with AAA titles here and there, the Switch has been one of the most underwhelming home console releases in the past 22 years. And if the software Nintendo has been putting their quality seal of approval on is any indication of what their hardware might be for the Switch 2, then Nintendo's going to see a worse slump than what we saw with the Wii U. It's like when someone wins the lottery and they lose all of their motivation, except Nintendo was already valued at a $1,000,000,000, so I don't really know why I left that half-finished analogy in the script. Was I supposed to come back to the number one reason why a Switch 2 would fail is if the console continues to benchmark poorly? A wise man once said, if the game's not fun, why bother? Well, it's not fun to pay $90 for a Nintendo game only to have it dip down to 6 frames per second because I moved the camera too fast. Look man, I'm not asking for a fucking RTX 9090 in the Switch 2, but the cynic in me is expecting Nintendo to drop a LeapPad Pro on our heads next Christmas, and you're all gonna eat it up because,
oh, it's stronger than the iPhone 13 this time.
This would be less of an issue if it was third-party specific. You know, Nintendo has always been a difficult company to develop for, but it's not a third-party issue. Monster Hunter's ports onto the Switch are one of the games that look the best, but they also run the best. They're a third-party developer, and their games run better consistently than Nintendo's games. These are the games that Nintendo should be putting pride into, right? These are Nintendo's babies. Somehow, Nintendo's first-party AAA titles still play like Flipnote Studio comics. So this begs the question, why do third-party developers even bother with the Switch? It's because the Nintendo Switch has sold 130 million units. That's 4 times the population of Canada. There's at least one person who can't sit on a plane for a couple of hours without playing Mortal Kombat 1. At the very minimum, this console has to hit a native 1080p 60 frames per second. That's such a low bar for 2023. Hell, it's a low bar for 2017, when the original Switch came out. But the average Nintendo fan's iron levels were too low to fucking care, I guess. 1080p 60 frames per second has been a YouTube video standard since like 2012. I'm not saying the majority of people who make videos on Nintendo games use emulators because of the numerous improvements on how Nintendo games look and run on third-party hardware. I'm saying they do it because Nintendo is fine with drip feeding you their legacy content and playing the victim if you find a way around it. This brings me smoothly into the next segment. The games. It's no shocker that Nintendo has the ability to make some of, if not the most immersive gameplay experiences. The problem goes back to that laziness that I was speaking of. After the Switch's initial hype train died down, Nintendo was caught sitting on their hands for the next 5 years. We had Super Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild right out of the gate. Some of the best games on the Nintendo Switch. Those were like release titles, came out right away. Then we had Smash Bros. Ultimate and Fire Emblem about a year later, Pokemon Sword and Shield a year after that, a Yoshi game that the fans didn't like. How do you do that? It's like messing up Kirby. How do you mess this up? In 2020, we got half an Animal Crossing game. In 2021, we got Metroid Dread along with 3 Pokemon games that were so half-baked, people came from all corners of the internet just to gasp in amazement at how poorly the games ran. And everything else in between that was a remaster, an HD remake, a deluxe edition, or a sequel to an IP that they already had the framework to. All of these games, aside from the games from the first 2 years of the Switch's lifespan, and maybe Metroid Dread, came out to mixed or outright negative reception. These are Nintendo's creations. These games represent the quality and the values of Nintendo as a whole. These games are half-baked, but they sell. Either because Nintendo knows they have a stranglehold on your nostalgia bone, or your blind optimism compels you, hoping that the games will invoke that sense of childhood whimsy that only Nintendo games can. Listen, I know this probably came off as a bunch of negativity because I've just read you my 4-page manifesto on why I don't actually like the company that makes my favorite games and why I think they're going the way of Sega. But it's because I don't want to see it happen. I feel like I'm in the back seat of a car that my alcoholic dad is driving. He keeps making obvious mistakes, but he's blaming other drivers, like ROM websites are stealing Nintendo IPs. It's like you close the eShop with all the legacy content on it. Your substitute for it is an overpriced monthly subscription service with ass cheeks for game selection, and it requires you to connect to Wi-Fi once a week, or it takes the games away. Heaven forbid I want to play Pokemon Emerald without paying a scalper $300 for a cartridge with a dry battery. Or what if I want to play Smash Bros. Ultimate with my friends with in-game voice chat? Who the fuck is connecting their Switch Online to their cell phone? Just hop on Discord. I would gladly pay $15 one time for a digital copy of a game they released in 2004. I would do this and come back for Fire Red as soon as I was done for another $15. But I'm not paying $65 per year for a couple of hits from Nintendo's golden era that I can play as long as I don't take a vacation. I think it's fair to say the Switch has been Nintendo's midlife crisis. The console's lifespan started off with some of the flashiest displays of game dev creativity that we've ever seen since the industry went from 2D to 3D. And within 2 years, it was a platform Nintendo used to reminisce on their glory days with HD remakes, along with a few AAA titles thrown in here and there that almost always left fans feeling underwhelmed. Nintendo has historically been on and off with their console releases. The N64 was a smash hit. The GameCube didn't sell so well. The Wii is almost completely responsible for how widespread the gaming industry is nowadays. People didn't even realize the Wii U was a standalone console. They thought it was an expansion to the Wii, so no one bought it. The Switch has been Nintendo's most successful business venture to this date. And if the Switch 2 follows this trend, it could be the last Nintendo console we see. But what do I know? I'm just a dude on the internet.